The text that Christians call the Old Testament is, in fact, a collection of texts written mostly in Hebrew in ancient Israel over 2,000 years ago by a variety of different authors. The Old Testament is the first part of the Christian sacred text, the Bible. These Hebrew scriptures are known in Judaism as the Torah. The Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Torah, or Old Testament: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Jewish and Christian tradition hold that Moses wrote these 5 books, and the scriptures themselves often mention Moses writing down God's words. But in fact, study of the texts shows that there are at least 4 different authors, and possibly further editors, who each made their mark on the meaning of the texts. Only a very small number of Christians continue to believe that Moses was the author of the Pentateuch. Catholic teaching encourages the study of these texts with the help of archaeology, ancient history, and linguistics. It has been suggested that an author in Hebrew tradition is the person who gives spirit to the work, not necessarily having written it. Some scholars have argued that there are 4 voices of writers in the text that they label J, E, D, and P. In the Hebrew scriptures, the letters YHWH are used as a name for God. The original Hebrew is written without any vowels, so we don't know how this was pronounced at the time of writing. But with the addition of vowels, this is now pronounced Yahweh. This became in German Jehovah, which gives us the name Jehovist for the first writer. This is because the writer used the letters YHWH when talking about God. So text that uses this name for God is thought to be written by the Jehovist or Yahwist. This author focuses on God's promises to save the people and following cultic rituals. This is thought to be the earliest writer, around 3,000 years ago in the 10th century BC. The Elohist, on the other hand, uses the word Elohim to talk about God. Elohim is the plural of El, which may have meant strong, but is translated as God in singular in English. The Elohist was writing a little later than the Yahwist, around the 9th century BC. The focus of the Elohist is more on morality and living properly. God also speaks to people in dreams in the Elohist's writing. The Deuteronomist, D, is a clear individual writer who wrote most of the book of Deuteronomy, as well as other books of the Hebrew scriptures. The Deuteronomist was writing in the 7th and 6th centuries BC. The theme of the books written by the Deuteronomist is historical, telling the history of the Israelites, in particular of the reign of the kings. It also tries to explain that the bad things happening to the Israelites were caused by their own sins. The priestly writer P was writing after the Israelites were exiled or forced out of the land in which they had been living in the 6th century BC. Some people believe that the P source is more an editor or a collection of editors, editing earlier writings, than an individual giving new material. The priestly name was given because the Levites are the priests, and they are emphasized in the texts. P also focuses on the order of creation and the power of God. You can see that the Pentateuch, or the first 5 books of the Hebrew scriptures that Christians call the Old Testament, were written over at least half a century or 500 years. Therefore, it is not possible that there was one single author. Rather, there was a series of authors who added their own perspective and in some cases edited texts previously written by others.